I will never get a roommate again after what happened. I never thought sharing a room could turn into a nightmare, but then I met Jake. From the moment I moved in, something felt off about him. He was friendly enough, always with a sly smile, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made me uneasy. It started with the small things, his obsession with collecting oddities. I came home one day to find the walls plastered with framed pictures of strange objects, old keys, antique clocks, and, most unsettling of all, dozens of rusty hooks. "They're just decorations," he said, but I could see the excitement in his eyes. "Why so many hooks?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. "They're for hanging memories," he replied cryptically. "You'll understand soon enough." At first I thought it was a joke, but as the days passed, the hooks began to take on a sinister quality. One night, I woke to the sound of scratching. My heart raced as I listened, the noise growing louder, almost rhythmic. It seemed to come from the wall where the hooks were clustered together. I turned to Jake, but he was asleep, his breathing steady. I brushed it off, convincing myself it was just my imagination. But the next morning I noticed something odd. There were fresh scratches on my arm, like tiny claw marks. When I asked Jake about it, he just smiled, that same unsettling smile. "You should be more careful," he said. "The hooks don't like being ignored." I laughed nervously, but deep down I felt a chill creeping into my bones. The scratching continued each night, always accompanied by whispers that seemed to call my name. It was maddening. I tried to focus on my classes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. One evening, I found Jake sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by an array of strange items, feathers, broken glass, and more hooks. "Look at what I found," he said, holding up a small, weathered key. "This one has a story." "Where did you get it?" I asked, trying to mask my unease. "Let's just say it belonged to someone who had a lot of secrets," he replied, his eyes glinting in the dim light. That night, the scratching morphed into frantic pounding. I jolted awake, heart racing, and turned to Jake. He was gone. Panic surged through me as I crept toward the wall, where the sound was coming from. The hooks seemed to glisten in the darkness, as if they were alive. I reached out, touching one, and suddenly the pounding stopped. Then I heard Jake's voice from behind me, low and calm. "You shouldn't have done that." I spun around to find him standing in the shadows, his face eerily still. "What's going on?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're just trying to help you remember," he said, stepping closer. "Everyone has memories that need to be hung up." "Memories?" I echoed, confusion mixing with fear. "Don't you see? They're here to guide you," he continued, eyes locked on mine. "To show you what you're missing." I stumbled back, heart pounding. I don't want any part of this. But as I turned to escape, I felt a sharp pain in my arm. I looked down to see a thin wire hooked into my skin, as if the wall itself were pulling me back. I yanked it free, gasping, "What did you do to me?" Jake stepped closer, a sinister grin spreading across his face. "You're one of us now. The hooks know you. They can show you everything you've forgotten." I darted for the door, adrenaline surging through me. But as I reached for the handle, I heard the whispers intensify, swirling around me like a storm. "Stay, stay," they chanted, and I could feel the hooks drawing me in, their metallic grip tightening around my mind. I pushed through the door and stumbled into the hallway, the whispers fading behind me. I ran, not stopping until I reached my friend's apartment, breathless and shaking. I told them everything, but they just laughed, thinking I was stressed out. A few days later, I got a text from Jake. "You can't escape your memories. They'll always find you." I tried to ignore it, but every night I'd wake up to the sound of scratching, like a desperate plea. I moved out, but even now, the hooks haunt my dreams. I see them everywhere, hanging in my mind, waiting for me to return. I don't know what Jake did with those hooks, but I do know this. Some memories are better left unremembered, and some roommates should never be trusted. I will never get a roommate again after what happened. Moving in with a new roommate is always a gamble, but I never expected my luck to run out like this. When I met Rachel, she seemed perfect, organized, friendly, and easy to talk to. But there was something strange about her, something lurking just beneath the surface. It all began when I discovered the floorboards in our shared apartment. They creaked in an unsettling way, like they were whispering secrets. Rachel brushed it off with a laugh. "Old building, you know? Just the charm of it." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it. A few days in, I noticed Rachel had a peculiar habit. She would often sit on the floor, cross-legged, staring down at the boards with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. When I asked her what she was doing, she simply smiled and said, "Listening." "Listening to what?" I pressed, a chill creeping down my spine. "To the stories they tell," she replied cryptically, her gaze unwavering. That night, I couldn't sleep. The creaking grew louder, echoing in my mind. It sounded like whispers, urgent and pleading. I tried to block it out, but as I lay there in the dark, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. The next morning, I found Rachel in the living room, surrounded by a collection of strange objects, old toys, shards of glass, and what looked like pieces of broken furniture. "I found these under the floor," she said, excitement dancing in her eyes. "Isn't it fascinating?" I forced a smile, but inside I felt uneasy. "Yeah, fascinating," I muttered. I couldn't shake the feeling that those items held stories I wasn't ready to hear. As the days went by, Rachel's behavior became more erratic. She would spend hours on the floor, whispering to herself. One night, I woke up to find her gone. I got out of bed, heart pounding, and followed the faint sounds of murmuring. I found her in the living room, the light flickering above her. She was kneeling on the floor, a small knife in her hand, scratching at the wood. "What are you doing?" I gasped, horrified. "I'm trying to free them," she said, her eyes wide and unfocused. "They want to be remembered." I grabbed the knife from her, my hands shaking. "You can't do this. It's just wood." She stared at me, her expression shifting to one of anger. "You don't understand. They're trapped. They need help." I backed away slowly, my heart racing. "We need to talk about this. It's not healthy." But Rachel just laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the empty room. "You think you could just walk away? They won't let you." That night, I barely slept. The whispers grew louder, filling my mind with fragmented voices. I couldn't take it anymore. I called my friend, desperate for help. When they arrived, I explained everything, but Rachel was nowhere to be found. We searched the apartment, calling her name. Finally, we heard a soft tapping from beneath the floor. My heart dropped. "Rachel," I shouted. "Help me," came her voice, muffled and frantic. I looked at my friend, panic rising. "We have to get her out." We pried up a floorboard, the nails protesting as we pulled them free. The darkness beneath seemed to stretch endlessly, and I could hear Rachel's frantic cries growing fainter. "Please, I can't breathe." As we reached in, I felt something cold and slimy brush against my arm. I recoiled, heart racing. "What is this?" "It's just the space beneath," my friend said, but I could hear the uncertainty in their voice. Finally, we managed to pull Rachel up, her face pale and haunted. "They won't let me go," she whispered, eyes wide with terror. They need me. They need all of us. I didn't know what she meant, but the sense of dread that had settled over our apartment was thick and suffocating. After that night, I decided I had to leave. I found another place and moved out, but the memories lingered. I'd lie awake at night, hearing the whispers and feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon me. Sometimes I still dream about Rachel, about the way she stared at the floor, as if she could see things hidden beneath. I've heard that the building has been vacant since I left, that the floorboards creak louder now, filled with stories waiting to be told. And every so often I wonder, what stories did Rachel hear? What is still trapped beneath those floorboards?